Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Halloween Podcast. I am your host, Lyle Perez. Every year, as the weather turns cool and the leaves start to fall, something begins to quietly take over. It shows up in coffee shops, grocery aisles, candles, cereals, you name it. I'm talking about pumpkin spice. But here's the thing. For something so popular, most people don't actually know what pumpkin spice is, or where it came from. It isn't just some modern trend that Starbucks invented. The blend we know today as pumpkin spice has a history that spans centuries. It goes all the way back to ancient spice trade routes and colonial America, long before the first pumpkin spice latte was ever poured. In this episode, we're going to uncover the real history of pumpkin spice, where the ingredients came from, how they became tied to fall traditions, and how this simple blend of spices turned into one of the most powerful seasonal symbols in American culture. No hype, no fiction, just the truth behind the flavor that took over fall. Let's dig in. Let's start with the obvious question. What is pumpkin spice? Despite what the name suggests, pumpkin spice doesn't contain any actual pumpkin. It's a blend of warm spices traditionally used to flavor pumpkin pie and other fall desserts. The standard combination includes cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cloves, sometimes allspice. This mixture is meant to complement the naturally mild flavor of pumpkin, which is more earthy than sweet. When baked into pies or desserts, the pumpkin often takes a backseat to the spices, which deliver the warm, comforting flavor people associate with fall. You'll find variations of this blend across brands and recipes, but cinnamon is almost always the dominant ingredient. In fact, most commercial blends are 60 to 70% cinnamon. It's worth noting that this spice combo has existed for centuries in other parts of the world. Spices like cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger were commonly used in Middle Eastern, South Asian, and North African cuisines long before they became tied to pumpkins in America. Today, the term pumpkin spice is most often used as a marketing label, especially on products that don't contain pumpkin at all, just the spice profile. So when you pick up a pumpkin spice candle, coffee, or cereal, you're not tasting pumpkin. You're tasting the traditional spice mix that Americans have long associated with pumpkin pie, which leads us into the next part of the story: how these spices came together in the first place. To really understand the origins of pumpkin spice, we have to step back, and I mean way back, to the global history of spices. The ingredients we associate with pumpkin spice today, cinnamon, nutmeg, ginger, cloves, and allspice, have been used for thousands of years across multiple continents. Let's start with cinnamon. It's one of the oldest known spices used in ancient Egypt as far back as 2000 BCE. Egyptians used cinnamon not just in food, but also in embalming rituals and medicine. It was highly prized and imported through trade networks from regions like Ceylon, modern-day Sri Lanka, and India. In medieval Europe, cinnamon was a symbol of wealth and status. It was rare, expensive, and often found in the kitchens of the elite. Nutmeg and cloves trace their roots to the Spice Islands, the Maluku Islands in Indonesia. These spices were so valuable during the Middle Ages and Renaissance that they sparked international conflict. European powers fought bloody wars over control of the spice trade, particularly the Portuguese, Dutch, and British. Nutmeg, in particular, had a mystical reputation. In medieval Europe, it was believed to ward off disease, especially during the time of the Black Death. Cloves were also used for their strong aroma and antimicrobial properties, burned in homes or carried in pomanders to cleanse the air. Ginger has been cultivated in South Asia and China for thousands of years. It was used in traditional Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine and was introduced to Europe by Roman traders. By the 11th century, it had made its way into English kitchens as a common spice in both savory and sweet dishes. Allspice, the newest addition to the pumpkin spice profile, wasn't introduced until the 16th century. Native to Central America and the Caribbean, it was brought to Europe by Spanish explorers. Its flavor reminded Europeans of a mix of cinnamon, nutmeg, and cloves, hence the name allspice. Together, these spices formed the backbone of many ancient and medieval spice blends. In Arab, Persian, and Indian cuisines, similar combinations were used in sweet and savory dishes. European mixed spice or pudding spice blends, which emerged in the 17th and 18th centuries, often included these same ingredients. These early spice blends weren't associated with pumpkins at all. That connection would come later, after these powerful flavors made their way to North America, where they would find a new role in colonial kitchens and eventually in the desserts we now associate with fall. By the time European colonists arrived in North America, pumpkins were already a staple crop among indigenous peoples. Native American tribes cultivated several varieties of squash and pumpkin, which were used in savory dishes, stews, and roasted preparations. The pumpkin was valuable for its long shelf life and high yield, but it wasn't initially associated with sweets or dessert. European settlers, however, brought with them a strong tradition of using spices in baked goods. When faced with the New World's abundance of pumpkins, they began incorporating them into pies and puddings, dishes that resembled what they already knew from back home. To flavor these early pumpkin desserts, colonists began using familiar imported spices like cinnamon, ginger, and nutmeg. One of the first known American cookbooks, American Cookery by Amelia Simmons, published in 1796, includes 2 recipes for pumpkin pie. These recipes call for molasses, milk, and traditional baking spices, marking some of the earliest written evidence of what we'd recognize as pumpkin spice being used in American baking. Over time, these ingredients became staples in American fall and holiday cooking. By the 19th century, spiced pumpkin pie was firmly established as a traditional autumn dessert, especially around Thanksgiving, which became a national holiday in 1863 under Abraham Lincoln. Pumpkin pie was quickly seen as a distinctly American dish, and the spice blend that flavored it became deeply associated with fall. But at this point, pumpkin spice as a name or pre-mixed product didn't exist. Home cooks measured out the individual spices each time they baked. That would change in the 20th century when convenience and commercial branding took over, and companies began bottling the flavor of fall. By the early 20th century, pumpkin pie had become a fall and holiday tradition across the United States. But it still required home bakers to pull out multiple tins of individual spices: cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and more for each recipe. In an era that increasingly valued speed and convenience in the kitchen, spice companies saw an opportunity. In the 1950s, companies like McCormick and Company began offering a pre-mixed blend labeled pumpkin pie spice. It wasn't a new invention in terms of ingredients, but it was the first time the combination was branded and sold under a single, marketable name. It was designed to be a shortcut for baking pumpkin pie, offering consistent flavor with just one scoop. For home bakers, especially those preparing holiday meals, it was a time saver, and it quickly became a pantry staple. The packaging and labeling made it clear what the mix was for: pumpkin pie. Cookbooks and women's magazines from the 1950s through the 1970s began listing pumpkin pie spice directly in recipes instead of calling for the individual components. By the 1980s, it was a standard grocery store item. Other spice companies followed suit, and the term pumpkin pie spice became widely recognized. But at this stage, it was still strictly tied to baking. The idea of putting it in drinks, snacks, or candles hadn't happened yet. Its use was mostly seasonal, showing up around October and disappearing by January. There was no cultural obsession, no memes, and certainly no buzz. It was simply a baking shortcut, an efficient blend created for pies and breads. But this small, convenient product was laying the groundwork for what would become one of the biggest seasonal marketing phenomena in modern food history. The next big moment wouldn't come until 2003, when a coffee company turned it into a lifestyle. In 2003, pumpkin spice took a sharp turn, from a humble baking blend to a full-blown cultural phenomenon. That shift came from one product, the pumpkin spice latte, introduced by Starbucks. The drink wasn't part of the original Starbucks seasonal menu. It was developed by a small team at the company's headquarters in Seattle, where they were brainstorming new fall beverages to follow up the success of their winter and holiday offerings. After testing flavors like cranberry and caramel, the team settled on pumpkin, partly because it captured the spirit of the season, and partly because no one else had done it. What's interesting is that the first version of the drink didn't even contain pumpkin. It was flavored only with a mix of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove flavoring. The pumpkin puree wasn't added until 2015, after public backlash and increased consumer demand for real ingredients. When it launched in select stores in 2003, the pumpkin spice latte was an unexpected hit. The combination of espresso, steamed milk, sweet pumpkin spice flavor, and whipped cream resonated with customers looking for a cozy, seasonal treat. By the following year, Starbucks rolled it out nationwide. Over time, the pumpkin spice latte became a defining seasonal product. According to Starbucks, it's their most popular seasonal drink of all time, with over 600 million sold globally as of the mid-2020s. And it's only available for a limited time, usually from late August through early November, creating a sense of urgency and tradition each year. Other companies quickly followed. Competing coffee shops began offering their own versions, while grocery store shelves filled with pumpkin spice flavored creamers, instant coffees, and cold brews. But it didn't stop there. The pumpkin spice latte had opened the door to pumpkin spice everything, and the market was ready to capitalize. What Starbucks had unintentionally done was detach pumpkin spice from just baking and make it a symbol of fall itself. It wasn't about pies anymore. It was about scarves, crisp air, golden leaves, and comfort. The flavor profile became emotional, not just culinary. And that's when things started getting a little excessive. Following the massive success of the pumpkin spice latte, pumpkin spice became less of a flavor and more of a seasonal brand. What started as a coffee drink soon spread across entire product categories: food, beverages, cosmetics, cleaning products, and even pet items. By the late 2000s and early 2010s, retailers were launching limited edition pumpkin spice everything, often as early as mid-August. Grocery stores stocked items like pumpkin spice Cheerios, pumpkin spice Oreos, yogurt, protein bars, and granola, cream cheese, hummus, and salad dressing, pumpkin spice beers and whiskeys. Outside of food, the trend got even stranger. Brands began releasing pumpkin spice candles, soaps, and lotions, pumpkin spice room sprays and toilet paper, pumpkin spice dog treats, and even cat litter. At one point, pumpkin spice Spam became a real, limited release product. The flavor became so ubiquitous that it sparked a cultural backlash. Online memes poked fun at how extreme the trend had gotten. Articles criticized it as overdone, artificial, or a symbol of superficial, seasonal consumerism. It was often associated with the stereotyped image of basic fall behavior: cozy sweaters, Instagram selfies, and a Starbucks cup in hand. Despite the mockery, pumpkin spice remained popular. In fact, the backlash may have fueled its longevity, giving it attention year after year. Sales continued to grow, and companies began experimenting with earlier release dates to outpace competitors. Meanwhile, smaller and local businesses got in on the trend too, creating homemade pumpkin spice syrups, baked goods, and craft beers to appeal to the seasonal crowd. Artisanal brands focused on real ingredients in response to growing consumer awareness, particularly after Starbucks reformulated the pumpkin spice latte to include actual pumpkin in 2015. At this point, pumpkin spice had fully evolved from a baking shortcut to a cultural marker of the fall season. It wasn't just something you ate or drank, it was part of the seasonal identity, right up there with Halloween decorations, fall festivals, and hayrides. Whether people loved it or rolled their eyes, pumpkin spice had become impossible to ignore. By the time pumpkin spice reached peak popularity in the 2010s, it had become more than just a flavor. It was part of the ritual of fall. And in America, there's no bigger fall ritual than Halloween. Pumpkin spice naturally fits into Halloween culture, even if it wasn't originally designed that way. The flavors, cinnamon, clove, nutmeg, are warm and aromatic, and they evoke the same cozy feelings that Halloween lovers associate with the season: sweater weather, candlelight, and the glow of jack-o'-lanterns on chilly nights. The connection deepened as more Halloween-branded products started incorporating pumpkin spice. You'll now find pumpkin spice flavors in Halloween-themed cereals and snack cakes, limited edition candies and cookies, fall beer and cider releases tied to haunted events or Oktoberfest-style celebrations, candle lines and wax melts marketed with Halloween aesthetics, black cats, skeleton labels, foggy forests. Retailers like Target, Trader Joe's, and Walmart lean heavily into the flavor during their seasonal Halloween rollouts. Pumpkin spice goods sit on shelves next to costumes, spider webs, and trick-or-treat candy, reinforcing the link in shoppers' minds. Halloween events and haunted attractions also started using pumpkin spice as part of the sensory experience. From pumpkin spice lattes sold at fall festivals to pumpkin spice air fresheners pumped into haunted houses, the scent has become part of the ambient atmosphere of the season. Even social media has played a big role. Fall influencers and Halloween enthusiasts often post pumpkin spice drink photos alongside Halloween decorations. The pumpkin spice latte has become almost a prop in the modern Halloween lifestyle. featured in costume selfies, haunted house line photos, and even horror-themed cafe events. All of this has helped build a connection between the flavor and Halloween that wasn't there decades ago. While pumpkin spice originated in baking and spread through general fall marketing, its proximity to Halloween festivities and its appearance in seasonal packaging solidified it as part of the Halloween vibe. It's not spooky on its own, but it's become a companion to the holiday, a kind of cozy counterbalance to the creepy. For many people, the first sip of pumpkin spice is the unofficial start of Halloween season, whether they're carving pumpkins or watching horror movies at home. As pumpkin spice became a cultural obsession, it wasn't long before things started to get weird. What began as a simple baking shortcut somehow turned into a seasonal free-for-all, with companies across the country trying to cash in on the trend, sometimes with great success and sometimes with questionable results. One of the strangest and most unexpected entries came in 2019 when the makers of Spam released a limited edition pumpkin spice version of their iconic canned meat. It sold out online in under 7 hours. People were curious, if not exactly enthusiastic. Some cooked it up and paired it with waffles or eggs. Others just bought it for the novelty, and probably left the can unopened in the back of their pantry. And the oddities didn't stop there. One natural deodorant company launched a pumpkin spice scent, complete with clove, nutmeg, and cinnamon oils. It was advertised as boldly festive, though it raised more than a few eyebrows. Because, let's be honest, no one really asked for their underarms to smell like a pie. Even hummus didn't escape the trend. At the height of pumpkin spice mania, grocery store shelves started carrying sweet dessert-style hummus flavored with pumpkin spice. The garlic and lemon were swapped out for cinnamon and brown sugar. Some people dipped graham crackers in it and called it a win. Others backed away slowly. In 2021, the Cup Noodles brand, yes, the instant ramen, joined the madness. They released a pumpkin spice variety that came with one key instruction: do not add the usual broth. It was intended to be more of a creamy, cinnamon-scented noodle dish. Reactions were mixed, but it was a real product, sold at Walmart, and definitely made headlines. Even pets got their share of the season. Several companies released pumpkin spice dog treats, and yes, people bought them. Pumpkin is actually good for dogs in moderation, and the flavoring used is usually pet safe. But it still feels surreal to think we're feeding our pets seasonal snacks from the same flavor family that's in our lattes. And if all of that wasn't enough, you could also find pumpkin spice toothpaste, pumpkin spice lip balm, and of course a long list of fall-themed beers. At this point, pumpkin spice wasn't just a flavor, it was a lifestyle. A limited-time badge of seasonal identity that some people embraced completely, and others mocked relentlessly. The truth is, even the weirdest products still sell. They feed into that sense of tradition and nostalgia. And when something is only around for a short window of time each year, people are more willing to try it, even if it's just to say they did. Pumpkin spice, whether it's in your coffee, your candles, or your canned meat, has become more than a taste. It's a cultural signal that fall is here. Pumpkin spice has a long, surprising history, one that stretches from ancient trade routes to modern marketing shelves. It's warm, familiar, and comforting for most people. It shows up with the changing leaves and disappears just as quickly. For many, it marks the start of something special, cooler weather, cozy mornings, Halloween nights. But for me, pumpkin spice has a very different meaning. I didn't even know it existed until I met my wife, Mandy, back around 2005. When she first brought it to my attention, we were either just married or about to be. And one day, while shopping at a Stater Brothers supermarket on the West Coast, she introduced me to this thing called pumpkin spice creamer. She lit up when she saw it in the fridge section. She had it before, loved it, and wanted me to try it. At the time, I wasn't chasing Halloween like I do now, but when she described it to me, that fall flavor, the cozy aroma, the idea of it, I immediately thought of Halloween. We picked up a container of that creamer and a new to me kind of Folgers coffee called Black Silk. The combo was perfect. We drank it every morning until the creamer disappeared for the season. That year felt like magic. But a few years later, that feeling vanished for good. One night, during pumpkin spice season, we stopped at Jack in the Box on the way home from work. They had 2 seasonal shakes, pumpkin pie, which was my favorite, and eggnog, which was my wife's favorite. We had a long commute back then, almost 2 hours each way, so we'd often carpool. That night, we decided to make a detour for shakes. My mother-in-law was watching our daughter, Callie, and everything seemed fine, until we got a call that changed everything. She was hysterical. Said she thought Callie had eaten some of her muscle relaxers. The ambulance was on the way. We tried to get more info, but she was too panicked to give us anything helpful. We were still 45 minutes out, and the drive home was torture. She wouldn't answer the phone again, and we were left in total silence, except for our own fears building minute by minute. When we finally got home, the ambulance was there. We rushed in, terrified. But thankfully, Callie was okay. The paramedics checked her out and monitored her, but she hadn't taken anything. It was just a misunderstanding, an overreaction maybe. But the damage was done. We still had to take her to the hospital just to be sure. That night stuck with me. Ever since, pumpkin spice has never tasted the same. It brings me right back to that moment, the fear, the panic, the helplessness. That stupid shake sitting in my cup holder while my whole world felt like it was falling apart. To this day, I avoid pumpkin spice. I don't want to relive it. I know it sounds dumb, how a flavor can trigger that much emotion, but it does. Mandy still loves it. Every year, she looks forward to the lattes, the creamer, the candles. And I smile for her, but I quietly pass on it. For me, pumpkin spice will always come with a little bit of weight. So, as we wrap this one up, just remember, behind every flavor, every tradition, every seasonal favorite, there's a story. Some sweet, some strange, and some that stay with you forever. Thanks for listening to the Halloween podcast. As always, if you like the show, please share it with all your Halloween-loving friends and leave a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow us on Facebook or reach out to us at thehalloweenpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, you guys have a good night.